The morning sun blazed over Lagos Island as Adaeze knelt beside the gutter, counting the last of her money with trembling fingers, 200 naira, all that stood between her family and another night of hunger. She had no idea that in less than an hour, she would give it all away to a filthy old man sitting outside the market, and that single act of kindness would change her life forever. Adaeze was 26 years old, a fabric seller who had inherited nothing but debt when her father passed away 2 years earlier. Every morning she walked the dusty road from Ajagunle to Balogun Market, carrying bundles of Ankara cloth on her head, hoping to sell enough to feed her younger brother, Chidera, who was still in secondary school. Business had been slow for weeks. The market women whispered that she was cursed. That misfortune followed her like a shadow, and some had stopped buying from her stall altogether out of superstition. But Adaeze never let bitterness take root in her heart. Her mother had always told her that a kind heart was the only wealth no thief could steal, and she believed it, even when her stomach growled with hunger and her palms were empty. That particular morning, as she made her way through the crowded market entrance, she noticed him, an old man slumped against the wall near the vegetable sellers, his clothes torn and caked with dried mud, his hair a wild gray tangle, his feet bare and cracked from walking without shoes. Flies hovered around him, and passers-by stepped over his outstretched legs as if he were invisible. Nobody looked at him. Nobody spoke to him. He was simply part of the scenery of suffering that Lagos had grown used to ignoring. Adaeze slowed her steps. Something about the way his shoulders trembled, the way his eyes were fixed on the ground in quiet defeat, reminded her of her late father in his final days, when illness had stripped him of his pride. She approached him slowly, and the smell of the street hit her. Sweat, dust, and despair mixed together. "Good morning, Papa," she said gently, crouching down so she could meet his eyes. The old man looked up, startled, as though no one had addressed him with such warmth in years. His eyes were tired but sharp, studying her face carefully.
"Have you eaten today?"
she asked. He shook his head slowly, his lips cracked and dry. Adaeze reached into the small pouch tied around her waist and pulled out the 200 naira note, the only money she had left in the world. Her hand hesitated for only a second before she pressed it into his palm. "Take this, Papa. Buy yourself something to eat. God will provide for me and my brother somehow. If you believe in kindness and second chances, hit that like button right now, drop a comment below, share this video with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Whispering Tales Stories, so you never miss another story that touches the heart." The old man stared at the money in his palm, then at Adaeze's face as though searching for some hidden motive, some trick behind her generosity. Finding none, his eyes glistened with tears. He tried to blink away. "Why would you give a stranger your last money?" he asked, his voice hoarse from disuse. Adaeze smiled, adjusting the bundle of fabric on her head. "Because somebody has to remember that we are all human. Papa, money comes and goes, but kindness stays with you." She helped him to his feet, noticing how frail he seemed, how his hands shook as he gripped her arm for support. She walked him to a nearby food stand and used the last coins from her pocket, coins she had been saving for transport fare, to buy him a plate of rice and a bottle of water. She sat with him under the shade of an almond tree as he ate slowly, savoring every bite as though he hadn't tasted food in days. They talked as he ate. He asked about her life, her family, her dreams, and Adaeze found herself opening up to this stranger in ways she rarely did with people she had known for years. She told him about her father's death, about the crushing weight of debt, about Chidera's dream of becoming an engineer, and how she feared she would never be able to afford his university fees. The old man listened intently, nodding occasionally, his eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, he simply said, "You have a good heart, my daughter. The world needs more people like you." Then he thanked her, rose slowly from the bench and shuffled away into the crowd, disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. Adaeze walked back to her stall with an empty pouch and an empty stomach, but strangely her heart felt lighter than it had in months. She had no idea that the old man she had just fed was Chief Emeka Osaretan, the reclusive billionaire whose business empire stretched across oil, telecommunications, and banking throughout West Africa. Years earlier, after his wife's death and a bitter betrayal by his own business partners, Chief Osaretan had begun disguising himself as a beggar once a month, walking the streets of Lagos unnoticed, testing the hearts of the people who passed him by. He had done this for 3 years, and in that time, He had encountered greed, cruelty, and indifference more times than he could count. People had mocked him, kicked dust in his face, and laughed at his suffering. But something about Adaizi's kindness that morning had struck a chord deep within him that he hadn't felt in years. 2 weeks passed, and Adaizi had nearly forgotten about the old beggar, consumed by the daily struggle to keep her stall running and her brother in school. Then one afternoon, a sleek black car pulled up outside the market, drawing curious stares from every trader nearby. A well-dressed young man in a crisp suit stepped out, holding a folder, and asked around until he found Adaizi's stall. "Are you Adaizi Nwachukwu?" he asked politely. Confused and slightly frightened, she nodded, her heart pounding as market women began whispering around her. The young man introduced himself as an assistant to Chief Emeka Oseretin and explained that his employer wished to see her at his estate that very evening, sending the car to bring her there safely. Adaizi arrived at the towering mansion on Banana Island with her hands shaking, convinced she had done something wrong, that perhaps she was being punished for some misunderstanding. But when she was led into a grand sitting room and saw the same old man from the market, now bathed, dressed in fine agbada, his silver hair combed neatly, she nearly fainted with shock. Chief Oseretin smiled warmly and gestured for her to sit. "Do you remember me, my daughter?" he asked. Adaizi could barely speak, tears already welling in her eyes as the truth settled over her like a wave. "You were the beggar," she whispered. "You were testing people." He nodded slowly. "For 3 years I walked those streets disguised as a poor man, watching how people treated those who had nothing to offer in return. Most looked away. Many laughed. But you, Adaizi, you gave me the last money in your pocket without hesitation, without asking who I was or what I could give you back. That kind of heart is rare, and it deserves to be rewarded." He explained that he had been searching for someone trustworthy to help run one of his foundations, community outreach programs, someone who understood real suffering because they had lived it themselves. He offered her not just a job, but a complete transformation of her life, a scholarship for Chidera's education, a proper home for her family, and a position within his company that would allow her talents and integrity to shine. Adaizi wept openly, overwhelmed by a kindness she never imagined receiving, especially from someone she had helped without any expectation of return. "I didn't do it for a reward," she said through her tears. Chief Oseretin took her hand gently. "That is exactly why you deserve one." In the months that followed, Adaizi's life transformed completely, yet she never forgot the lesson that had brought her there. She used her new position to establish support programs for struggling market women, ensuring that no one would face the desperation she once knew alone. Chidera enrolled in university, his dreams finally within reach, and their small family found stability they had only prayed for in whispered nights of worry. But more than the money, more than the mansion or the title, what changed Adaizi most was the confirmation that kindness, given freely and without condition, always finds its way back to the giver, often in ways beyond imagination. If this story touched your heart today, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and share it with someone who needs to. Believe that kindness still matters in this world. Your support means everything to us here at Whispering Tales Stories. And before we go, if this story moves something inside you, type the word blessed in the comments below, so we know this story reached your heart. Adaizi often returned to that same spot near Balogun Market, not to sell fabric anymore, but to remind herself of where it all began. Of the morning, she gave away her last 200 naira to a stranger, who looked like he had nothing. Never knowing he held the power to change everything, she would sit for a moment under the almond tree, close her eyes and whisper a quiet thank you to the universe for teaching her that even in our darkest, most desperate moments, our capacity to give is never truly empty, and sometimes the poorest hands are simply waiting to become the richest hearts.